Introduction. In the hustle and bustle of our daily lives, unexpected events can jolt us from our routines, leaving us bewildered and vulnerable. Such was the case for one man as he went about his workday, only to be confronted by a sudden and life-altering incident. This is a story of resilience, medical intervention, and the road to recovery. Join us as we delve into the tale of a man who, in the blink of an eye, found himself facing a health crisis at his workplace. It's a story that highlights the importance of quick thinking, the invaluable role of healthcare professionals, and the crucial choices we make for our well-being. This is the story of a man who endured a stroke, underwent surgery, and embarked on a journey of healing, all while learning how to adapt to a new reality.
Chapter 1: A Surprise at Work. Every morning, the man followed the same routine. He would wake up, get dressed, have a quick breakfast, and head off to work, ready to tackle the day's challenges. He worked at a bustling office, surrounded by the familiar faces of his colleagues. The office buzzed with the usual chatter, the sound of ringing phones, and the clatter of keyboards. But on this particular day, as the man sat at his desk, something unusual began to unfold. It started with a mild discomfort, a slight headache that crept in unnoticed. At first, he dismissed it as the result of a restless night's sleep or perhaps too much stress from work. He took a deep breath and tried to focus on his tasks. However, as the morning progressed, that discomfort escalated into something more sinister. The headache intensified, and he began to feel a strange numbness in one of his arms. It was as if his arm had a mind of its own, refusing to respond to his commands. His vision blurred, and he struggled to make sense of the words on his computer screen. Alarmed by these sudden and bewildering symptoms, the man's colleagues noticed his distress. They saw him clutching his head in pain, his face contorted with confusion and fear. Concern rippled through the office as they gathered around him, unsure of what to do. As the seconds ticked by, it became evident that this was no ordinary ailment. The man's condition deteriorated rapidly, and then, in a moment that felt like an eternity, he suddenly lost consciousness. His head slumped onto his desk, and his colleagues gasped in shock and alarm. This was the moment when their ordinary workday took a dramatic and unexpected turn. In the blink of an eye, their coworker had gone from being a familiar presence to a person in urgent need of help. Little did they know that their quick thinking and the actions that followed would be the first crucial steps in a journey of survival and recovery.
Chapter 2: Calling for Help. The office environment, once filled with the hum of activity, now fell into an eerie silence. The sudden and dramatic collapse of their colleague left everyone stunned. The urgency of the situation quickly became apparent, and a sense of panic threatened to take hold. However, in the midst of this crisis, one brave colleague took charge. She reached for her phone, dialed 911, and anxiously explained the situation to the emergency operator on the other end of the line. Her voice trembled with worry as she described the man's sudden loss of consciousness and the alarming symptoms that had preceded it. As she provided the necessary information, the operator assured her that help was on the way. They dispatched an ambulance immediately, recognizing the gravity of the situation. Time was of the essence when it came to medical emergencies like this. The news of the 911 call spread throughout the office, and a collective sigh of relief washed over the coworkers. They knew that professional help was on its way, but their concern for their fallen colleague remained palpable. Some offered comforting words to the woman who had made the call, acknowledging her quick thinking in a moment of crisis. While they waited for the ambulance to arrive, the co-workers tried their best to make the man as comfortable as possible. They carefully moved him away from his desk, laying him down on the floor to ensure his safety. A few provided blankets and pillows, while others kept a watchful eye on him, praying for his well-being. Time seemed to stretch as they waited anxiously, but the distant wailing of sirens eventually pierced the air, signaling the arrival of the ambulance. The man's co-workers rushed to the entrance of the building to guide the paramedics to their fallen colleague. They had taken the first crucial step in getting him the help he so desperately needed. As the paramedics hurried inside, their professionalism and expertise were a reassuring sight. They quickly assessed the man's condition and began administering initial medical care. The man's co-workers watched with a mixture of hope and apprehension, knowing that his journey to recovery had just begun.
Chapter 3: The Arrival of the Ambulance. The blaring sirens grew louder, signaling the imminent arrival of the ambulance. The co-workers anxiously awaited its arrival, their faces etched with concern and anticipation. Time felt like it was moving in slow motion, every second laden with worry for their fallen colleague. Finally, the ambulance screeched to a halt outside the office building, and the paramedics rushed into action. They were a well-coordinated team, moving with precision and purpose. Their uniforms, adorned with medical insignia, gave them an air of authority and reassurance. With skillful hands and calm demeanor, the paramedics knelt beside the unconscious man, assessing his vital signs. They checked his pulse, monitored his breathing, and carefully examined his responsiveness. Their quick but thorough evaluation confirmed the seriousness of his condition. One paramedic communicated with the colleagues, requesting details about what had transpired before their arrival. The co-workers provided a concise account of the man's symptoms, the suddenness of his collapse, and the fact that he had lost consciousness. In the ambulance, equipment beeped and medical supplies were efficiently organized as the paramedics continued their evaluation. They needed to act swiftly but methodically to stabilize the man's condition and provide the best possible care during transit to the hospital. The paramedics gently lifted the man onto a stretcher, securing him in place to prevent further injury. With practiced precision, they maneuvered the stretcher through the office, carefully navigating the narrow hallways and bustling co-workers who watched in worried silence. Outside, the ambulance doors swung open, revealing a sterile and well-equipped interior. The man was carefully transferred onto the ambulance bed, and the paramedics wasted no time in securing him to the monitors and life-saving equipment. As the ambulance doors closed, the paramedics reassured the co-workers that their colleague was in good hands and that they would do everything in their power to help him. With the man safely inside, the ambulance sped away from the office building, its sirens still wailing, as the co-workers watched it disappear into the distance. The journey to the hospital had begun, and the man's fate now rested in the hands of the dedicated paramedics racing against time to get him the medical attention he so urgently needed.
Chapter 4: A Visit to the Hospital. Inside the speeding ambulance, the paramedics worked tirelessly to stabilize the man's condition as they raced toward the hospital. The wailing sirens and flashing lights signaled the urgency of the situation to other drivers on the road, ensuring a swift and unimpeded journey. Inside the ambulance, the man's vital signs were closely monitored. The paramedics communicated with the hospital staff, relaying critical information about the patient's symptoms, vital signs, and the urgency of the situation. This communication was essential to ensure that the hospital was prepared to receive the man and provide immediate care upon arrival. As the ambulance pulled up to the hospital's emergency entrance, a team of medical professionals was already waiting. Doctors, nurses, and technicians hurriedly gathered, ready to take over the care of the man as soon as he arrived. The hospital staff had been alerted about the incoming emergency, and they were well prepared to provide the necessary treatment. The paramedics swiftly transferred the man from the ambulance stretcher to a hospital gurney, ensuring his continued monitoring and care during the transition. The medical team worked seamlessly together, wheeling the gurney into a treatment room where they could assess the man's condition more thoroughly. The emergency room bustled with activity as doctors and nurses surrounded the patient. They began a series of tests and examinations to determine the exact nature and severity of the man's condition. CT scans, blood tests, and neurological assessments were conducted to piece together the puzzle of what had caused his sudden collapse. It wasn't long before a diagnosis emerged: the man had suffered a stroke. This medical emergency occurs when blood flow to the brain is disrupted, and it can have severe consequences if not treated promptly. The medical team wasted no time in developing a treatment plan to address the stroke and minimize its impact on the man's health. The man's coworkers, who had anxiously followed the ambulance to the hospital, were kept informed of his condition by the hospital staff. They offered words of support and encouragement, knowing that their colleague was in the capable hands of medical professionals. In the following hours, the hospital became the backdrop for intensive medical care and intervention. The man's journey to recovery had begun, but it was a journey filled with challenges and uncertainty. The hospital would be his sanctuary, where he would receive the specialized care and attention needed to overcome the effects of the stroke.
Chapter 5: Emergency Surgery. Inside the hospital, the medical team had swiftly diagnosed the man's condition as a stroke, a serious and life-threatening event that required immediate intervention. Time was of the essence, and the doctors and surgeons wasted no time in developing a plan to address the blockage in the man's blood vessels. The decision was made to proceed with emergency surgery to remove the clot that was preventing blood from flowing to the man's brain. This surgical procedure, known as a thrombectomy, was a critical step in preventing further damage and improving the man's chances of a successful recovery. The operating room buzzed with activity as the surgical team prepared for the procedure. Surgeons, nurses, and technicians worked in tandem, ensuring that every detail was meticulously attended to. Sterile equipment was laid out, monitors were calibrated, and the surgical field was carefully prepped. The man was transferred onto the operating table, his vital signs closely monitored as anesthesia was administered to induce a deep, painless sleep. Once he was fully under, the surgical team made a small incision in his blood vessels, carefully threading a catheter through the arteries leading to his brain. Using advanced imaging technology, the surgeons guided the catheter to the site of the blockage. With remarkable precision, they gently removed the clot, restoring blood flow to the man's brain. The relief was palpable among the medical team as they witnessed the successful removal of the obstruction. After the procedure was completed, the surgical team carefully closed the incision site and monitored the man as he began to wake from anesthesia. He was then transferred to a recovery room, where he would be closely observed during the critical postoperative period. The surgery had been a success, but the man's journey was far from over. Recovery from a stroke was a complex process that required time, rehabilitation, and a dedicated medical team. The man's family and coworkers, who had been anxiously awaiting news, were informed of the positive outcome of the surgery, offering them a glimmer of hope in the midst of uncertainty. In the coming days and weeks, the man would face the challenges of rehabilitation, as he worked to regain his strength and mobility. The surgery had been a pivotal moment in his journey, and it marked the beginning of his path towards recovery, filled with determination and the unwavering support of his healthcare team and loved ones.
Chapter 6: 2 weeks in the hospital. Following the successful emergency surgery, the man was transferred to a dedicated recovery unit within the hospital. Here, he would spend the next 2 weeks under the watchful care of a team of healthcare professionals who were committed to guiding him on his journey to healing. The hospital room became his temporary home, a place where the beeping of monitors and the routine checks of vital signs were constants. While the man had moments of discomfort and frustration, he knew that this was where he needed to be to regain his health. During this time, the medical team closely monitored his progress, ensuring that his condition remained stable and that there were no complications from the surgery. Medications were administered to prevent further clot formation, and regular assessments were made to gauge the extent of any neurological deficits caused by the stroke. The man's family and friends visited him regularly, offering words of encouragement and support. Their presence was a source of comfort as he navigated the challenges of his recovery. They cheered him on as he worked with physical therapists, occupational therapists, and speech therapists to regain his strength, mobility, and cognitive abilities. Physical therapy sessions became a crucial part of his daily routine. With the guidance of skilled therapists, he embarked on a series of exercises and activities designed to improve his muscle strength and coordination. Each small victory, whether it was taking a step or regaining the use of his arm, brought a sense of accomplishment and motivation. Occupational therapy helped him relearn the activities of daily living that he had temporarily lost due to the stroke. Simple tasks like dressing, eating, and bathing became milestones in his recovery journey. The therapists provided strategies and tools to adapt to his new reality and regain his independence. Speech therapy was also a vital component of his rehabilitation. The stroke had affected his ability to communicate effectively, and the speech therapists worked diligently to help him regain his speech and language skills. They employed various techniques to enhance his verbal expression and comprehension. Throughout his 2-week hospital stay, the man's progress was closely monitored, and adjustments were made to his treatment plan as needed. The medical team provided guidance on managing his medications and maintaining a healthy lifestyle to reduce the risk of future strokes. As the days turned into weeks, the man's determination and resilience shone brightly. His time in the hospital had been challenging, but it had also been transformative. He had made significant strides in his recovery, thanks to the dedicated care of the healthcare professionals and the unwavering support of his loved ones. But the next phase of his journey would take place beyond the hospital walls, as he prepared to transition to the next stage of his rehabilitation and adapt to life after the stroke. The lessons he had learned during his 2 weeks in the hospital would serve as a foundation for the challenges that lay ahead on the path to recovery.
Chapter 7: Post-Hospital Care. After spending 2 weeks in the hospital, the man's journey towards recovery continued as he transitioned to post-hospital care. This phase was just as crucial as his time in the hospital, as it focused on his ongoing rehabilitation, dietary choices, and the management of his overall health. Upon leaving the hospital, the medical team provided the man with a comprehensive care plan tailored to his specific needs. This plan included several important components. Physical therapy. The man's physical therapy sessions continued, but now in an outpatient setting. Skilled therapists worked with him to further improve his mobility, balance, and strength. These sessions were designed to help him regain as much independence as possible. Occupational therapy. Occupational therapy sessions also continued, focusing on refining his ability to perform daily tasks and return to a more normal routine. The therapists helped him adapt to any persistent challenges he faced. Speech therapy. If necessary, speech therapy continued to address any residual speech or language difficulties. The speech therapists used various techniques to enhance his communication skills. Medication management. The man's medications were carefully reviewed and adjusted as needed. The medical team ensured he understood the importance of taking his medications consistently to prevent further strokes and manage any related health conditions. Dietary guidance. The man received dietary counseling from a nutritionist. He learned which foods to include in his diet to support his overall health and reduce the risk of stroke recurrence. He was advised to maintain a diet low in salt, saturated fats, and cholesterol, while incorporating plenty of fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and lean proteins. Lifestyle modifications. The medical team emphasized the importance of lifestyle changes. The man was encouraged to quit smoking, limit alcohol consumption, and maintain a healthy weight. Regular exercise, as recommended by his physical therapist, was also an integral part of his daily routine. Ongoing monitoring. The man had scheduled follow-up appointments with his healthcare providers to monitor his progress and make any necessary adjustments to his care plan. These appointments were essential in ensuring that he continued to receive the support he needed. As the weeks passed, the man's commitment to his post-hospital care plan began to yield positive results. His physical strength improved, and he regained much of his mobility. He felt more confident in his ability to carry out daily activities, and his speech continued to improve. The support of his family and friends remained a vital source of encouragement during this phase of his recovery. They provided emotional support and helped him make necessary lifestyle changes. Together, they celebrated his achievements, no matter how small, and reminded him of the progress he was making. The man's journey through post-hospital care was marked by dedication, resilience, and the guidance of healthcare professionals who were committed to his well-being. While challenges remained, he was determined to embrace the lessons he had learned on his path to recovery, and make the most of his second chance at a healthy and fulfilling life. Chapter 8: Understanding the Symptoms. As the man progressed through his rehabilitation and post-hospital care, it became increasingly important for him to understand the symptoms of a stroke. Knowledge of these symptoms was not only crucial for his own health, but also for the people around him who might one day be in a position to provide assistance. The medical team played a pivotal role in educating the man about the signs and symptoms of a stroke. They emphasized that recognizing these symptoms early could lead to faster medical intervention and better outcomes. Here are some of the key symptoms they shared. Sudden weakness or numbness. The man learned that one of the hallmark signs of a stroke is a sudden onset of weakness or numbness in the face, arm, or leg, often on one side of the body. This weakness can be severe and may affect the ability to move or control the affected limb. Trouble speaking. He was made aware that difficulty speaking or slurred speech is another common symptom of a stroke. The person may have trouble forming words, and their speech may be garbled or incomprehensible. Confusion. The medical team stressed that sudden confusion, trouble understanding what others are saying, or difficulty in expressing thoughts can be indicative of a stroke. This cognitive impairment can occur suddenly and is often alarming. Severe headache. An intense and sudden headache, often described as the worst headache of my life, can be a sign of a stroke, especially if it is accompanied by other symptoms. The man understood that this was a red flag. Trouble seeing. Visual disturbances, such as sudden blurred or double vision, loss of vision in one eye, or difficulty seeing clearly, were also explained as potential stroke symptoms. Dizziness and loss of balance. Feeling dizzy, unsteady, or experiencing a sudden loss of balance can be a warning sign. The man was told that some individuals may even collapse if the stroke affects their coordination. The medical team stressed the importance of acting swiftly if any of these symptoms or a combination of them occurred. They advised the man and his loved ones to remember the acronym FAST as a simple way to recognize and respond to stroke symptoms. F for face. Ask the person to smile. Is one side of their face drooping? A for arms. Ask the person to raise both arms. Is one arm drifting downward or weak? S for speech. Ask the person to repeat a simple sentence. Is their speech slurred or strange? T for time. If you observe any of these signs, it's time to call 911 or the emergency services in your area immediately. Time is critical in stroke treatment. Understanding the symptoms of a stroke became a vital part of the man's life. He knew that staying informed and vigilant could make all the difference in a future emergency. This knowledge empowered him to take charge of his health and share this crucial information with his friends and family, ensuring that they too could recognize the signs of a stroke and act swiftly when it mattered most.